significant figures. So significant figures are each of the digits of the number that are used to express the required degree of accuracy. So you can think about when you want, let's say, a piece of timber cut, and let's say you go to the shops and say, I want it cut to 1 meter. You could ask, I want it to be cut 1.5 meters. What if you asked for it to be cut at 1.5137 meters long? They'd probably look at you funny and say, we can't cut it to that accuracy. And this is what significant figures are all about. So significant figures are counted from left to right, starting from the first non-zero digit. And zeros in between significant figures, so non-zero numbers, are significant. So what does that mean? Let's have a look at 28,004. So remember, we're counting from our first non-zero number, which in this case is a 2, and this number has 5 significant figures because it ends in a non-zero as well. So this is 5 significant figures. What about 0.000023? Well, we're counting from our first non-zero. In this case, it's a 2, and we've got 2 digits that are non-zero after the first non-zero. So this one is 2 significant figures. What about 20.10? Well, whenever we have a 0 after a decimal, that actually is a significant figure. So this one is 4 significant figures because our first digit is a non-zero. It's 4 significant figures. What about 87.1410? So remember, zeros in the middle of non-zeros are significant. We count from our first non-zero, and in this case, we have 6 significant figures. (0.06500). So we're counting from our first non-zero, which in this case is a 6. Zeros after the decimal are significant. So here we have 4 significant figures. Let's look at a tricky one. 23,000. This one's tricky because we're going from our first non-zero, which is the 2, but zeros, trailing zeros that aren't decimals like this one, can either be significant or not significant. So you can think about if the number was originally 23,000 and we rounded it to 23,000, they'd all be significant. But if the number was 23,001 and we rounded to the nearest 1,000, we'd get 23,000, and we'd only have 2 significant figures. So this one is a little ambiguous, and it's either 2, 3, 4, or 5 significant figures. It just depends on what the starting number was. So trailing zeros that aren't after the decimal can be ambiguous, and we actually don't know exactly how many significant figures this is. It could be 2, 3, 4, or 5. Let's look at rounding a number with significant figures. Let's look at 23,456.72. Let's start off with one significant figure. We want to round to one significant figure. So to do this, we want to round to one significant figure, so we start with our first non-zero, which is right at the beginning. We're looking at our next number. Is it 5 or higher? It's not. So this number stays the same. So we have the option to keep it the same or to add 1, but because our second number is not 5 or higher, we're going to keep it the same. That's going to be a 2, and then everything after it becomes a 0. And we don't have to put the decimal places, so correct to one significant figure, this number ends up being 20,000. Let's go to two significant figures. So for two significant figures, we're looking at the third number. Is that 5 or higher? It's not. So that number stays the same, and everything else after it becomes a 0. So to two significant figures, this becomes 23,000. Let's look at three significant figures. Whoops. Okay, so for three significant figures, we have to look at the fourth digit. Is that 5 or higher? Sorry, the fourth significant figure. And is that a 5 or higher? It is, which means this number has to be rounded up by 1, and everything else after it becomes a 0. So we get 23,500 for that one. What about four significant figures? So this is our fourth significant figure. So we're looking at that number after it. Is it 5 or higher? It is. So that number has to be increased by 1, and everything else after it becomes a 0. So we get 23,460. Let's go five significant figures. So we're looking at our fifth significant figure. We're looking at the number after that. Is it 5 or higher? It is, which means this number has to be increased by 1, and everything else after it becomes a 0. So we end up getting 23,457. Finally, we can do six significant figures. So we're looking at our sixth significant figure. Is the number after that 5 or higher? It's not. So that 7 is going to stay as 7, and everything else after it becomes 0, and we can get rid of it. So this one's going to be 23,456.7.